Millionaire hires a fake bride to convince his grandmother of his love, but her last wish stuns him. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. The late afternoon sky over Manhattan was dim, clouds hanging low like gray curtains. In the back seat of a sleek Blacktown car, Adrian Hayes adjusted the cuff of his tailored shirt, his jaw set, eyes unreadable. To the world, he was the picture of control. A 34-year-old billionaire, ruthless in the boardroom, unshakable in every negotiation. But tonight, his armor had a crack. The doctor's words from yesterday still clung to him. Your grandmother doesn't have much time left. If there's something she's waiting for, something that gives her peace, now is the moment. And Adrian knew exactly what she was waiting for: love. The one thing he had never managed to give her. His grandmother, Eleanor Hayes, had raised him after his parents' accident. She built her world around him, believed in him when no one else did. And all she ever asked for in return was to see him happy, settled, with someone by his side. But Adrian never had time for love. Relationships had been strategic at best, superficial at worst. And now, as her health declined, he faced an impossible deadline. Unless he could convince her he had found the love of his life, she would leave this world disappointed in him, the one failure he could never bear. That's when the unthinkable plan formed. If love couldn't be found in time, it would have to be created. The car pulled up in front of a worn brick bookstore on the corner of 14th Street. Its neon sign flickered faintly, Brooks & Company letters missing, the paint cracked with age. Inside, the scent of paper and dust filled the cramped aisles. And behind the counter, with her hair pulled back in a loose braid, stood Lily Brooks. She was struggling to balance a stack of books while arguing with the landlord over the phone. "I just need another week, Mr. Carter," she pleaded, her voice breaking despite her best effort to sound strong. "The customers will pick up. The store is my father's legacy. Please, just a little more time." But the landlord's tone was merciless. "You've been saying that for months. Either you pay the arrears by Friday, or the locks change." "I'm sorry." Lily hung up, her fingers trembling around the receiver. She pressed the heel of her palm against her forehead, trying to hold back tears. She couldn't lose this place. Not after everything her father had sacrificed. The doorbell chimed as Adrian stepped inside. His presence filled the room instantly. Tall, dark suit, perfectly cut, eyes sharp like storm clouds. Lily straightened, quickly brushing her hands on her skirt, suddenly aware of her scuffed shoes and ink-stained blouse. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice a little too quick. Adrian studied her, silent for a beat, then said simply, "I need a bride." Lily blinked. "Excuse me?" "I'll pay off every cent you owe on this shop," Adrian continued, his tone even, matter of fact. "And I'll provide additional compensation. In exchange, you'll marry me." The words dropped like thunder in the small bookstore. Lily laughed once, nervously, shaking her head. "This is some kind of joke, right? You walk in here, look around, and decide the girl behind the counter is your bride?" "No joke," Adrian said. His eyes didn't waver. "This is a business arrangement. My grandmother is dying. She wants to see me married. I don't have time to explain further. I need someone who can play the role convincingly for her sake. And I chose you." Lily gaped at him, then found her voice. "Why me?" "Because you're ordinary," Adrian said bluntly. "You don't run in my circles, you won't attract attention, and you look like someone my grandmother would believe I could fall in love with." Her chest tightened, equal parts insulted and flustered. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. This had to be insane. "You're out of your mind. I don't even know you." You don't need to," Adrian replied. He pulled out a folder, slid it across the counter. Inside was a contract, black ink, signatures waiting, terms already outlined. 1 year. Appear with me at family events. Live at my estate for credibility. In return, your debts vanish, and Brooks & Company becomes yours forever. Her eyes fell on the final page. There, clipped neatly, was a cashier's check. The exact sum she owed, with more zeros than she had ever seen. Her breath hitched. Her mind spun. The store, her father's memory, the looming eviction. Could she sacrifice her freedom, her pride, for survival? Adrian leaned in slightly, voice low but unyielding. "I'm offering you a lifeline. All you have to do is say yes." The shop felt suddenly too small, air pressing in on her lungs. Lily's heart pounded so loud it drowned out the traffic outside. This man was a stranger offering marriage like it was a contract to be signed, nothing more. Every instinct told her to run. But then her gaze fell on the stack of overdue bills beside the register, and the ghost of her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Promise me you'll fight for this place, Lily." Her fingers tightened around the edge of the counter. She swallowed hard. "What are the rules?" she asked quietly. For the first time, Adrian's lips curved in the faintest smile. He opened the folder again, pointing to the list inside. "5 rules," he said. She read them aloud, voice trembling. "No falling in love. Attend all family gatherings. Respect each other's privacy. Keep everything secret from the press." And her voice faltered on the last line. "The contract ends when your grandmother passes." Silence stretched between them, thick and unsteady. Lily's throat felt dry as dust. "And if I say no?" Adrian's eyes darkened, not with anger, but with something heavier. "Then I walk away, and you lose everything." Oh, the choice sliced through her like a blade. Either cling to her pride and watch her father's legacy vanish, or surrender to this impossible arrangement. Her hands shook as she picked up the pen. The nib hovered over the signature line. "I must be insane," she whispered. Then, with one sharp stroke, she signed. Adrian reached into his pocket, pulled out a velvet box, and flipped it open. Inside was a diamond ring, dazzling under the flickering shop light. "Welcome to our marriage," he said smoothly, sliding the ring across the counter. "The performance begins now." And as the weight of the diamond pressed into her palm, Lily realized her life had just changed forever. The morning after signing the contract, Lily woke to the sound of traffic echoing outside her apartment window. Sunlight filtered through the thin curtains, striping the floorboards in pale gold. For a moment, she almost forgot what she had done the night before. But then her eyes landed on the velvet box on her nightstand, the diamond ring catching the morning light like a cruel reminder. Her stomach turned. She had signed her name to a deal with a man she barely knew, a stranger with a perfect suit and sharper words, who had walked into her failing bookstore and offered her salvation in the form of a marriage contract. She thought of her father, of the countless evenings she had spent in the shop's cramped back room listening to him talk about stories, about honor, about never giving up. Would he see this as survival or betrayal? A knock at the door startled her. She scrambled out of bed, tugging a sweater over her worn nightshirt. When she opened the door, Adrian stood there, immaculate as ever, flanked by a woman in a crisp gray skirt suit. "Good morning," Adrian said, his voice even, betraying no trace of the awkwardness she felt. "We have a schedule to keep." "A schedule?" Lily echoed, still groggy. "This is Claire, my assistant. She'll help prepare you for the role you agreed to." The woman extended a polite but firm handshake. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Hayes." Lily nearly choked. "It's Brooks. I mean, not yet," Claire smiled thinly. "For appearances, you'll need to adjust quickly. The gala is in 3 weeks. Until then, we have work to do." Before Lily could protest, Claire was ushering her toward a waiting car downstairs. The sleek black sedan gleamed against the curb, driver already holding the door open. As Lily slid into the leather seat, she caught her reflection in the tinted glass. Hair undone, sweater frayed, the ring glinting on her finger. She barely recognized herself. The day unfolded in a blur. A stylist draped her in gowns worth more than the bookstore itself. A dance instructor guided her through slow waltz steps in a mirrored studio, her toes aching in unfamiliar heels. A speech coach corrected her posture, her phrasing, the tilt of her chin. "Don't look at the floor," the coach insisted, tapping her chin lightly. "Look as if you belong in the room, even if you don't." By the third lesson, Lily was exhausted, her feet blistered, her nerves frayed. When Adrian arrived that evening to check her progress, she nearly collapsed in relief. if only because his presence distracted the relentless instructors. He stood by the doorway, arms crossed, watching her stumble through another turn. "Left foot first, not right," he said calmly. "I know that," Lily shot back, wincing as her heel caught the hem of her dress. "These shoes are torture devices." "You'll manage," Adrian replied. His tone was cool, detached, but his eyes lingered on her a second longer than necessary. When she finally stopped, panting, hair sticking to her forehead, she glared at him. "This is insane," she said. "I'm not built for this world." "You signed the contract," Adrian reminded her. "You mean the contract where I'm supposed to magically transform into someone who doesn't trip over her own feet?" For the first time, his lips curved into the faintest smirk. "It's not about perfection. It's about conviction. People will believe what you believe. If you look like you belong, they'll follow your lead." Something about his words struck her, though she refused to admit it out loud. Instead, she sank into a chair, unlacing the hated heels. "Conviction, huh? I'll work on not falling on my face first." Days turned into weeks. Slowly, painfully, she improved. Her steps grew steadier, her voice firmer, her shoulders straighter. Yet she never lost her own rough edges, the nervous laugh, the way she fiddled with the hem of her dress, the honest awe when she first saw the chandeliered ballroom where the gala would be held. And Adrian noticed. He would never say it, but he saw how she greeted the staff at his estate with genuine warmth, how she thanked the driver each time she left the car, how she paused to admire the roses in his grandmother's garden, even when rushing to another lesson. She was not polished, not perfect, but she was real. One evening, after a particularly grueling rehearsal, Lily slipped out to the terrace overlooking the city. The skyline glowed in the dusk, skyscrapers like lit candles against the fading sky. She leaned on the railing, drawing a deep breath, wishing she could freeze this one quiet moment. "You're improving," Adrian's voice came from behind her. She turned, startled. He stood in the doorway, tie loosened for once, his expression unreadable. "That's generous," she said. "I nearly took out the violinist during practice." He stepped closer, the city lights catching in his eyes. "Still, you didn't quit." "Maybe I should have," she murmured. "Why didn't you?" Lily hesitated, then looked out over the city again. "Because of my dad. He built that bookstore with his hands. Every shelf, every crooked step. He told me stories were worth saving. If this is what it takes to save it, then I'll keep going." Adrian studied her profile in the fading light, something shifting quietly behind his gaze. "You're not what I expected." "And what did you expect?" she asked, almost daring him. "A woman who'd take the money and vanish when it was over," he said simply. Lily gave a small, tired smile. "Maybe I'm not very good at being who people expect me to be." For a moment, the air between them was still, charged. Then Adrian straightened, his usual composure snapping back into place. "Get some rest. Tomorrow will be harder." And he walked away, leaving her alone with the city and the strange ache in her chest. The night of the gala arrived sooner than she expected. The estate buzzed with preparation. The grand ballroom transformed with glittering lights, strings of crystal, and the murmur of guests dressed in gowns and tuxedos. Lily stood in front of the mirror, heart racing, the gown hugging her frame like it had been sewn from a dream. The ring on her finger sparkled under the chandelier's glow. Claire's voice was brisk as she adjusted the necklace around Lily's throat. "Remember, confidence. Smile, but not too much. And whatever happens, stay beside Adrian." When the double doors opened and Adrian offered his arm, Lily forced herself to breathe. Cameras flashed, voices murmured, eyes followed their every step. She felt her knees threaten to buckle, but Adrian's hand was steady against hers. "Just walk," he whispered under his breath. She nodded, willing her legs to move. Halfway through the evening, a journalist pushed forward, microphone in hand. "Mr. Hayes, we've heard rumors about your sudden engagement. Care to comment? Is this truly love, or just another business move?" The room fell silent. Dozens of eyes shifted toward them. Lily's throat went dry, but she remembered the speech coach's words. "Look as if you belong, even if you don't." She lifted her chin, forced her voice to steady. "Love isn't about convenience or calculation. It's about finding someone who sees you, not the money, not the titles, just you. That's what Adrian is to me." The words hung in the air, trembling with sincerity. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then the crowd erupted in polite applause, cameras flashing again. Adrian looked at her, something unreadable flickering across his face. Maybe surprise, maybe something else. And in that moment, Lily realized the performance was no longer just an act. The gala shimmered into the late hours, but Lily could hardly remember the speeches or the music. What replayed in her mind was the moment she had spoken into the microphone, her voice steady despite the tremor inside her chest. The words she had spoken about love, about being seen for who she truly was, had not been part of any script. They had come from somewhere deeper, somewhere raw. When the last guest drifted from the ballroom and the chandeliers dimmed, Adrian escorted her through the marble hallways of his estate. The night air pressed cool against her skin when they stepped out onto the rooftop terrace. The city stretched wide below like a constellation come to life. "You handled yourself well tonight," Adrian said at last. Lily laughed nervously. "You mean I didn't trip and send the caviar flying?" His lips curved slightly. "I mean you spoke from the heart. It was unexpected." She crossed her arms against the chill. "I thought you liked predictable outcomes." "I do," he admitted. "But sometimes unpredictability works in my favor." Silence settled between them, softer than it had been before. Lily's gaze drifted over the skyline. "Your grandmother," she said quietly. "She really means everything to you, doesn't she?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "She's the reason I'm here at all. After my parents died, she was the only one who believed I could become more than a broken boy with too much anger. She gave me discipline. She gave me a future. And now she's fading, and there's nothing I can do to stop it." The rawness in his voice caught Lily off guard. For the first time, the steel mask cracked, revealing the man beneath the man who feared loss, who carried a grief no fortune could erase. She touched his arm lightly. "You're not as unshakable as you want people to think." Adrian's eyes flicked down to where her hand rested, then back to her face. Something unspoken passed between them, a current, electric and fragile. He didn't move away, but after a moment he turned his gaze back to the skyline. "Don't mistake honesty for weakness," he said quietly. "I wouldn't," she replied just as softly. The following days blurred with a rhythm both exhausting and strangely comforting. Public appearances, dinners, more lessons in etiquette. Yet in the quiet in-between moments something shifted. Adrian lingered longer in conversations. Lily laughed more easily in his presence. When she stumbled in heels, he reached out instinctively, steadying her without comment. When he worked late into the night, she left tea outside his study, never mentioning it the next morning. It was still a contract. It was still supposed to be a performance. But the lines had begun to blur. One rainy evening, Lily found herself wandering the estate alone. She had grown restless, the gilded halls too quiet. Passing by the library, she noticed a faint light and stepped inside. Adrian sat in a leather chair, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled, a file open in his hands. "You work even on weekends?" she teased gently. He looked up, surprised, then gestured toward the shelf. "Habit." She moved closer, brushing her fingers across the spines of books that smelled of leather and dust. "My dad would have loved this room. He believed books were like friends, always waiting for you." Adrian studied her, the corner of his mouth softening. "And what about you? Do you believe that too?" "I have to," she said with a small shrug. "They're all I've got left of him." "Oh," he set the file aside. "He must have been a good man. The best," she whispered, blinking against the sting in her eyes. "He built our bookstore with his own hands. Every creak in the floorboards was his." Adrian leaned forward slightly, his expression unreadable. "And you're fighting to keep it alive, even if it means marrying a stranger." She gave a half smile. "Guess desperation makes us brave." The thunder rolled outside, low and heavy. For a moment, the silence between them wasn't empty, it was alive, charged. Lily's breath caught when Adrian's gaze lingered on her longer than usual, dark eyes softening in a way that made her pulse race. Then the door opened, shattering the moment. Claire entered briskly, holding a tablet. "Adrian, we have a problem." His composure snapped back instantly, the warmth gone as if it had never existed. "What is it?" Claire glanced at Lily, hesitated, then pressed on. "Rumors are spreading. Someone is questioning the legitimacy of your engagement. There's talk that this marriage is fabricated." Lily felt the blood drain from her face. Adrian's jaw hardened. "Who's behind it?" "We're not certain yet," Claire said. But the board is nervous. Investors don't like scandal. If this continues, your competitors will use it against you. Adrian rose from his chair, the calm surface of a man ready for battle. Find out who started it. Shut it down. Oh. Claire nodded and disappeared as quickly as she had come. Lily swallowed hard, voice low. People are starting to see through us, aren't they? Adrian turned to her, his expression unreadable once more. Let them look. What matters is that my grandmother believes. Everything else is noise. But when she met his eyes, she caught the flicker of something else. Fear, perhaps, or doubt. That night, long after Adrian had returned to his work, Lily lay awake in the guest suite. The storm outside mirrored the turmoil inside her. She had entered this contract to save her bookstore, to survive. But somewhere along the way, her heart had slipped into the performance, and now the world outside was circling, hungry for cracks. The next morning, the headlines were worse. Billionaire's bride, true love, or staged affair. Sources question. Sudden engagement of Adrian Hayes. Reporters camped outside the gates. Flashbulbs exploded whenever Lily stepped into the car. Whispers followed her at every charity event. By the end of the week, Adrian's grandmother, Eleanor, had heard the rumors. She summoned them to her room, her frail frame surrounded by pillows, eyes still sharp despite her illness. Tell me, Eleanor said, her voice thin but commanding. This marriage, is it real? The question struck Lily like a blade. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Adrian's hand closed gently, but firmly around hers, steadying her. Yes, he said, his tone resolute. It's real. Eleanor studied them both for a long, quiet moment. Then she smiled faintly, a smile that carried both love and suspicion. Good. Because my only wish is to see you truly happy, Adrian. Not just successful. Not just respected. Loved. Her words hung in the air long after they left the room. Later that evening, Adrian stood alone in the hallway outside Eleanor's door, his shoulders rigid, his expression carved from stone. Lily approached quietly, hesitant. She knows, Lily whispered. Adrian didn't look at her. She suspects. And what if she finds out the truth? He turned then, his eyes burning with a mix of anger and something deeper. Then I will have failed her. And I don't fail, Lily. The weight of his words pressed down on her chest. For the first time since the contract began, she wondered if they had both stepped into something they could no longer control. The storm of suspicion had begun, and neither of them knew if they could weather it without tearing each other apart. The storm broke on a Tuesday morning. Lily awoke to the shrill buzz of her phone, screen lit with endless notifications. Her stomach dropped as she scrolled through the headlines. Leaked contract proves Hayes' marriage a hoax. Adrian Hayes buys bride to please dying grandmother. Who is Lily Brooks? From bookstore clerk to billionaire's pretend wife. Her chest tightened as she clicked through the photos. Grainy images of her leaving the bookstore. Shots of her, clinging to Adrian's arm at the gala. Even her father's shop, plastered across tabloids as though it were evidence in a trial. The contract, their contract, was everywhere. The terms she had read aloud in Adrian's office, the signature she had scrawled in desperation. It was all exposed. By the time she reached the breakfast room, Adrian was already there, standing stiff by the window, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was low, cold, sharp as a blade. I don't care what it costs. Find out who leaked it. Silence them. Now. He ended the call, turning toward her. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes carried a storm darker than the news. You knew this could happen, he said. Lily flinched. I didn't leak anything. I didn't say you did, Adrian cut in. His voice was clipped, but there was something raw beneath it. But the damage is done. She sank into a chair, her hands trembling around the porcelain coffee cup a servant had set in front of her. Your grandmother. She's going to see this. Adrian's jaw clenched. Then we give her a reason not to believe it. The day unfolded in chaos. Cameras swarmed the estate gates. Investors called in panic, demanding explanations. Board members whispered about credibility, about stepping down. And then came the visit. Marcus Hayes, Adrian's cousin, strode into the estate with a smug smile, designer suit gleaming, the stench of triumph radiating off him. Adrian, Marcus drawled, as though savoring the moment. Quite the scandal. Imagine my shock when I learned your fairy tale marriage was nothing but a staged play. Adrian's eyes narrowed. You leaked it. Marcus raised his hands innocently. I? Oh, I wouldn't dare. But people talk. Documents circulate. All it takes is one loose thread. He leaned closer, voice dropping. The board is nervous. Grandmother is fragile. Perhaps it's time for someone else to carry the family legacy. The implication was clear. Marcus wanted Adrian's empire, and he would burn Adrian's reputation to ashes to get it. Lily stepped forward before she could stop herself. You're disgusting. Marcus's eyes flicked over her with disdain. And you are irrelevant. A pawn in Adrian's desperate game. Enjoy your role while it lasts, Miss Brooks. Because soon, there will be no stage left to perform on. He left with a smirk, his footsteps echoing down the marble hall. Adrian turned away, fists clenched. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, in a voice so low it barely carried, he won't win. I won't let him. But Lily could see the strain in his face, the battle he was fighting inside. That evening they visited Eleanor. The old woman's eyes were sharper than ever, despite her frail frame. She gestured for them to sit, her thin hands folded neatly in her lap. I've seen the papers, Eleanor said softly. They call this marriage a fraud. Lily's throat closed. She opened her mouth, but Adrian spoke first. It's not a fraud, he said firmly. Eleanor's gaze shifted between them. Then tell me, Adrian. Tell me with your eyes, not your words. Do you love her? The room seemed to shrink. Lily felt her heart hammering in her chest, her breath caught. Adrian's eyes met hers, steady, unwavering. Yes, he said. The word was quiet, but it rang like a vow. Lily swallowed hard, her chest tight. For a second, she almost believed it wasn't just part of the act. Eleanor smiled faintly, though her eyes glistened. Good. Then prove it. Not to me, to the world. That night, the house was heavy with silence. Adrian stood in the study, staring at the framed skyline through the tall windows. Lily entered quietly, unsure if she should speak. You lied to her, she said softly. Adrian turned, his face shadowed. Did I? You told her you loved me. He stepped closer, his voice low, dangerous. Do you think it was a lie? Her breath caught. This was never supposed to be real. But it is, Adrian said, the words sharper than glass. Somewhere between the contract and the cameras, it became real. You feel it too, don't you? Lily shook her head, but her body betrayed her, heat rising to her face, her chest tight. This is madness! Everything is falling apart, and you're talking about feelings? His hand hovered inches from hers, as though caught between restraint and surrender. Feelings are the only thing that can save us now. Before either could say more, Claire burst in, tablet in hand, panic etched across her face. It's worse. Marcus is filing for a board vote. He's using the scandal to push you out, Adrian. If we can't restore credibility, you'll lose everything, your seat, the company, all of it. Adrian's jaw hardened. Then I'll show them. How? Lily asked, her voice breaking. He turned to her, resolve burning in his eyes. By proving that nothing about us is fake. Her heart thudded painfully, because for the first time, she wasn't sure if he meant just for the cameras or for himself. The scandal was no longer just headlines. It was war. And the battlefield was their hearts. The days that followed were relentless. Reporters shouted questions through the estate gates. Flashbulbs burst each time Lily left the car. And Marcus's smirk seemed to haunt every headline. Adrian moved like a general at war meetings with lawyers, calls with board members, strategies crafted in silence. But beneath the surface, a tension pulsed between him and Lily, an unspoken truth pressing closer with each passing hour. One evening, after yet another meeting stretched past midnight, Lily wandered into the quiet of the garden. The roses glistened under moonlight, their fragrance soft against the night air. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to breathe, trying to still the chaos in her chest. She heard the crunch of footsteps on gravel. Adrian emerged from the shadows, his tie loosened, jacket slung carelessly over his shoulder. For once, he looked less like a billionaire CEO and more like a man carrying too much weight. You should be asleep, he said quietly. So should you, she replied. But I guess neither of us is very good at rest. He stopped beside her, gaze lingering on the roses. My grandmother planted these decades ago. She used to say they were proof that beauty can grow even in the harshest soil. Lily traced a petal with trembling fingers. She sounds like someone who believed in love. She did, Adrian said. His voice cracked almost imperceptibly. She still does. He turned to her then, eyes catching the moonlight. That's why I can't let Marcus win. Not because of the company, because of her. I can't let her leave this world believing I failed her. Lily swallowed, her throat tight. But Adrian, what if this lie is the thing that breaks her heart? He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. It's only a lie if nothing real exists between us. Her pulse quickened. And does it? For a long, breathless moment, he just looked at her. The man who never faltered, never exposed himself, stood vulnerable under the night sky. Then, without warning, he reached for her hand, lifting it slowly, deliberately. It does, he whispered. Her chest tightened. She should have pulled back, reminded him of the contract, of the rules. But instead, she let her fingers curl into his, the warmth spreading through her like wildfire. The silence between them was thick, magnetic. His other hand brushed against her cheek, hesitant at first, then surer when she didn't move away. She felt her breath hitch, her entire body trembling with the weight of what lingered between them. Lily, he murmured, her name breaking on his lips. Her eyes fluttered shut, leaning into the moment. And then she pulled back, heart racing. We can't, she whispered. This isn't what we agreed to. Adrian's jaw tensed, pain flashing in his eyes. Agreements change. People change. She shook her head, stepping back further, her chest aching. I can't be just another move in your strategy. I can't let myself fall for something that might not survive outside these walls. He flinched as though struck, but said nothing. The silence stretched until it felt unbearable. Finally, she turned, fleeing back into the estate, leaving him standing alone among the roses. That night, Lily lay awake in the guest suite, staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying every look, every touch, every unspoken word. She wanted to believe it was real, that the man behind the suit and the mask had shown her his true self. But fear gnawed at her, fear that she was only convenient, a solution to a problem, a performance scripted by necessity. Meanwhile, Adrian sat in his study, the city lights glimmering through the tall windows. The contract lay open on his desk, the black ink of her signature staring back at him. He closed the folder slowly, his chest tight. For the first time in years, he felt powerless, not against Marcus, not against the board, but against his own heart. The next morning brought no relief. Marcus's campaign grew louder, feeding on every whisper of doubt. The board meeting loomed, a reckoning Adrian could not delay. As the car carried them into the city, Lily sat stiff beside him, her gaze fixed out the window. The distance between them felt heavier than the glass, and steel towers rising around them. At the entrance of the skyscraper where the board convened, reporters swarmed, microphones thrust forward, questions shouted. Is the marriage real? Was the contract staged? Are you resigning, Mr. Hayes? Adrian ignored them, his hand firm on Lily's back as he guided her inside. But his eyes betrayed the storm brewing within. Inside the elevator, the silence was suffocating. Lily finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. You can't keep fighting this alone. His eyes met hers, dark and unreadable. I'm not alone. I have you. Her chest ached at the words, but doubt still clung to her. Was she his partner, or just his shield? When the doors opened, they stepped into the boardroom, a battlefield of polished wood and cold stairs. Marcus was already there, seated smugly among the directors. He rose with a smile too wide, too confident. Cousin, Marcus drawled, I trust you're ready to explain why this company should still be yours. Adrian didn't flinch. He reached for Lily's hand, holding it tightly, and for once she didn't pull away. Her heart hammered, fear and hope colliding in her chest. Because she knew the next move would decide everything, not just the company's future, but their own. And as Adrian's voice filled the room, steady and unyielding, Lily realized that whether or not she believed in the contract, she was already entangled in something far more dangerous. She was beginning to believe in him. The boardroom was a battlefield dressed in mahogany and glass. The long table gleamed beneath the overhead lights, surrounded by men and women in tailored suits, their expressions carved from stone. At the head sat Adrian, posture upright, eyes steady, every inch the commanding CEO. Beside him, Lily's hands trembled in her lap, hidden beneath the tablecloth. Marcus stood near the opposite end, his smirk cutting through the air like a knife. He held a stack of papers, tapping them lightly against the table for effect. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, voice smooth as oil, "the question before us is simple. Can this company survive with a leader whose credibility is in ruins?" Murmurs rippled through the room. Adrian remained silent, his gaze fixed on Marcus. Marcus continued, his tone dripping with false sympathy. "We've all seen the headlines. We've all read the contract. A marriage fabricated to deceive a dying grandmother, to fool investors, to protect an image. Tell me, how can we trust a man who lies about something as sacred as love?" Lily's chest tightened. Her eyes darted to Adrian, but his face betrayed nothing. Marcus spread the papers across the table, copies of the contract, their signatures stark in black ink. "This is not speculation. This is proof. Adrian Hayes purchased a bride. And if he will deceive his own grandmother, what makes us believe he won't deceive us?" The directors exchanged uneasy glances. One cleared his throat. "Adrian, do you deny this?" Adrian leaned forward, hands clasped. His voice was calm, but steel-edged every word. "What I deny is Marcus's claim that this marriage is meaningless. Yes, there was a contract, but what began as an arrangement has become something far more real than Marcus could ever understand." Gasps murmured around the table. Marcus laughed, sharp and cruel. "Touching, truly. But are we to run a billion-dollar empire on fairy tales?" He turned toward Lily, his gaze predatory. "Perhaps the bride herself would like to enlighten us. Tell us, Miss Brooks, how much is your dignity worth? A bookstore? A few zeros on a check?" Every eye turned to her. Lily's pulse roared in her ears. She opened her mouth, then froze. What could she say? That it had started as a lie? That somewhere along the way, it had changed? Would anyone believe her, or would her words simply fuel Marcus's fire? Adrian's hand slid over hers beneath the table, steady, grounding. She looked at him, saw the quiet plea in his eyes, and something inside her shifted. Lily rose slowly, her legs trembling. "I didn't marry Adrian for money," she said, her voice wavering at first, then gaining strength. "I married him to save something my father built with his own hands. I thought it was just a contract. I thought it was survival. But then—" She swallowed hard, her gaze locking with Adrian's. "Then I saw the man behind the mask. The man who would sacrifice everything for the woman who raised him. And I realized this isn't about wealth or power. It's about love. Maybe it didn't start that way, but it is now." The room fell silent. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to hold its breath. Marcus broke it with a sneer. "Lovely speech. Almost convincing. But unfortunately, words don't erase signatures. Contracts don't vanish because of tearful declarations. The truth is written in ink, and the ink damns you both." "Oh," he slammed the papers onto the table. "I call for a vote of no confidence." The directors shifted uneasily. Some nodded, others whispered to each other. The weight of the moment pressed down like a vice. Adrian rose slowly, towering over the room. "You may vote however you wish," he said, his voice carrying like thunder. "But understand this. Leadership is not built on gossip or contracts. It is built on vision, on integrity, on the ability to fight when every hand is raised against you. I built this company from the ground up, brick by brick, deal by deal, and I will not watch it be torn apart by a man who has never earned anything but his last name." His words cut through the air, sharp and undeniable. For a moment, even Marcus faltered. Then Marcus's lips curled into a smile. "Too smooth, too confident. Powerful speech, cousin, but speeches don't erase evidence. And evidence is all we need." The vote began. One by one, hands rose around the table. Some for Adrian, some against. Lily gripped his hand tightly beneath the table, her nails digging into his skin as though willing strength into him. When the final hand rose, Marcus's smile widened. "The board has spoken. Effective immediately, Adrian Hayes is removed as CEO." The words struck like a blow. Lily's breath caught, her heart plummeting. Adrian stood tall, his face unreadable, but she saw at the flicker of devastation, the wound no mask could hide. Marcus leaned back in his chair, satisfied. Don't take it personally, cousin. Business is business. Lily wanted to scream, to claw the smug grin off his face. But she couldn't move, couldn't speak. The world felt shattered around her. When the meeting ended, Adrian led her silently through the lobby, past the reporters, into the waiting car. The flashbulbs erupted like gunfire. Questions hurled through the chaos. Mr. Hayes, are you resigning for good? Is your marriage a sham? Adrian said nothing. The car door closed, shutting out the noise, leaving only the suffocating silence between them. Finally, Lily whispered, I'm sorry. Adrian turned his gaze to the window, the city rushing past. Don't be. This isn't over. But his voice was hollow, and Lily's heart twisted. For the first time, she saw not the unshakable CEO, not the man of steel and control, but a man broken, a man stripped of everything he thought untouchable. And she feared that if she couldn't reach him now, she might lose him forever. The car ride back to the estate was silent, heavy as stone. Adrian sat rigid beside Lily, his gaze fixed on the blur of city lights streaking past the window. His reflection stared back at him in the glass, cold, unreadable, but underneath, a storm brewed. Lily wanted to speak, to tell him the board's vote didn't erase the man he was, but her throat locked tight. She could feel the distance stretching between them, wider than the streets of Manhattan, wider than the empire he had just lost. When they arrived at the estate, Adrian didn't wait for the driver to open the door. He pushed it himself, striding into the house with long, purposeful steps. Lily hurried to follow, her heels clicking against the marble. He went straight to his study, closing the doors with a force that rattled the glass panes. She stood outside, heart pounding. Through the wood, she could hear movement papers scattering, the heavy thud of a fist against the desk. Finally, she gathered her courage and slipped inside. The room was chaos. Contracts strewn across the floor, a crystal tumbler of scotch, half empty on the desk, the skyline glimmering indifferently through the tall windows. Adrian stood with his back to her, shoulders tense, jaw tight. I built it, he said hoarsely. Every deal, every late night, every sacrifice, I bled for this company. And in one vote, they tore it away. Lily stepped closer, her voice trembling. Adrian. They believed Marcus, he spat, spinning toward her. His eyes were wild, raw. They believed a man who's done nothing but leech off the family name. And why? Because of that damned contract. Because I was desperate enough to stage a marriage. Her chest tightened. You weren't desperate for yourself. You did it for her. For your grandmother. His laugh was bitter, hollow. And look where it got me. Stripped of everything I've worked for. A fraud in their eyes. A failure in hers. That's not true, Lily whispered. Isn't it? His voice cracked. She asked me if I loved you, and I said yes. I thought if I said it loud enough, maybe it would become true. Maybe it already was. Oh, Lily's breath caught. Her heart thudded painfully. Adrian's gaze bore into hers, vulnerable in a way she had never seen. But now I don't know if you believe me, and maybe that's the cruelest part of all. The silence stretched between them, suffocating. Lily's eyes burned, but she forced herself to speak. Adrian, I do believe you. Not because of what you said in that boardroom, but because of what I've seen. The man who leaves tea outside my door. The man who steadies me when I stumble. The man who would burn down his empire before letting his grandmother die disappointed. That's the man I believe in. His chest rose and fell, unsteady. For a moment, the mask slipped, and she saw him as he truly was, wounded, terrified, but still fighting. But then he turned away, his voice low, defeated. Belief doesn't bring back what I've lost. Lily's hands curled into fists. She wanted to shake him, to drag him out of this pit of despair. Instead, she took a breath and said firmly, Then we'll build something new. He looked at her, startled. You've spent your life proving yourself to people who measure worth in numbers and power, she said, her voice steady now. But you don't need their approval to lead. You don't need Marcus's permission to matter. You have me, and if you let me, I'll stand beside you not as a contract, not as a performance, but as someone who sees you. His lips parted, but no words came. He only stared, as though the ground beneath him had shifted. That night, Adrian didn't return to the study. Instead, he sat beside his grandmother's bed, holding her frail hand while she slept. Lily watched from the doorway, her heart aching at the sight. Whatever empire he had lost, whatever titles had been stripped, here was the truth. The man who would not leave the woman who raised him. The next morning, news spread of Marcus preparing to take Adrian's place at a major investor event. The tabloids called it the changing of the guard. Reporters speculated Adrian would retreat, fade into disgrace. But Lily refused to let it end that way. She sought out Adrian in the garden, where he stood among the roses, their petals damp with dew. "Do you remember what your grandmother said?" she asked. His brows furrowed. "What do you mean?" "She told you to prove it," Lily said. "Not to her, to the world. You can't let Marcus define your story. You have to show them who you really are." Adrian's gaze hardened, but uncertainty flickered in his eyes. "And if they don't believe me? Then make them believe us," Lily said. Her hand found his, firm and steady. Together. The word hung in the air, powerful, undeniable. For the first time since the boardroom, Adrian's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Together," he echoed. And in that moment, the first sparks of a plan began to take shape. A plan not to salvage the broken contract, not to cling to a fallen throne, but to make a gesture so bold, so undeniable, that the world could no longer call their love a lie. The grand gesture was coming, and Lily knew it would change everything. The city hummed with anticipation. Banners stretched across downtown announcing the annual Hayes Foundation Gala, a night of charity, influence, and power. This year, Marcus had positioned himself as the host, eager to flaunt his new authority and cement Adrian's downfall. Reporters framed it as the final chapter of Adrian Hayes's empire, a spectacle where the fallen heir would vanish quietly into shame. But Adrian had other plans. The evening of the gala, the ballroom shimmered with chandeliers, every table draped in silk, champagne flutes glinting under golden light. Photographers crowded the entrance, waiting for Marcus to make his triumphant arrival. Instead, the doors opened to Adrian. He stood tall in a black tuxedo, Lily at his side in a gown of deep emerald, her hand resting in his arm. A murmur rippled through the room, cameras flashing wildly. He was supposed to be finished, and yet here he was, calm, commanding, unbroken. Marcus's smile faltered when he saw them. He pushed through the crowd, his voice laced with venom. "What are you doing here, Adrian? This is my event." Adrian met his gaze coolly. "This is grandmother's event. Always has been. And I'm here to honor her." Gasps whispered across the crowd. Marcus's eyes narrowed. "You're desperate, still clinging to an illusion. But illusions don't save reputations." Adrian turned, guiding Lily toward the stage. The orchestra quieted, the spotlight shifting as he took the microphone. His voice carried strong and steady through the hall. "Good evening," he began, his eyes sweeping over the crowd of investors, dignitaries, journalists. "You've heard rumors. You've seen the headlines. They call my marriage a contract, a deception, a lie. Tonight, I will not deny that it began as an arrangement. But what the world does not understand is what it became." A hush fell. Even Marcus stilled, eyes narrowing. Adrian looked toward Lily, his voice softening. "When I asked Lily to stand by me, it was out of desperation. I wanted to give my grandmother peace. I thought love could be staged, written into clauses and signatures. I was wrong, because love isn't found in contracts. It's found in the quiet moments when she steadies me without asking, when she laughs at my silence, when she sees not the empire but the man beneath it." Lily's breath caught, tears pricking her eyes. Adrian turned back to the audience. "So, yes, I deceived you. I pretended at first. But somewhere along the way, pretending became the truth. I love her, not for the sake of appearances, not for the sake of reputation, but because she is the only person who makes me more than my fortune, more than my name." The room was silent. Then, slowly, applause began. First a few hands, then dozens, until the entire ballroom echoed with thunderous clapping. Marcus stepped forward, his face twisted in rage. "This is theater, a desperate man's performance. Don't be fooled." Oh, quote. Adrian ignored him. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. The crowd gasped as he dropped to one knee before Lily. Lily Brooks, he said, his voice clear, unwavering, carrying to every corner of the hall. What began as a lie has become the truest thing I have ever known. Tonight, before everyone who once doubted us, I ask you not as part of a contract, not as part of an arrangement, but as the man who loves you, will you marry me for real? Lily's hand flew to her mouth. The world blurred, the cameras flashing like stars, the room holding its breath. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she whispered, "Yes." The applause roared, drowning out Marcus's sputtering protests. Adrian slid the ring onto her finger, not the cold diamond of a contract, but a band chosen for her alone. He rose, pulling her into his arms, and for the first time, their kiss was not staged, not rehearsed. It was real. Journalists shouted questions. Cameras captured every angle, but none of it mattered. The only thing that mattered was the truth revealed in front of the world. At the edge of the room, Eleanor's nurse wheeled her in quietly. Though frail, her eyes shone bright as she watched her grandson finally surrender to the very thing she had always prayed he would find. A single tear slipped down her cheek, and she whispered, "At last." Marcus stormed out, defeated, his ambitions crumbling beneath the weight of authenticity. The empire he sought could not be won by schemes, because the crowd had seen something greater love that could not be fabricated. As the orchestra swelled and the ballroom erupted in celebration, Adrian held Lily close, his lips brushing her ear. "No more contracts, no more rules, just us." She smiled through her tears. Just us. And in that moment, before the glittering chandeliers and the roaring applause, the lie that had once bound them dissolved completely, replaced by a vow no scandal could ever shatter. The gala still shimmered in memory when the estate grew quiet again. Days passed, but the echoes of that night, the applause, the kiss, the vow seemed to follow Adrian and Lily through every hallway. The scandal had flipped on its head. The papers no longer called it fraud, but a love story revealed in public. Investors who had wavered began returning calls. Marcus disappeared into silence. But inside the Hayes mansion, time was running thin. Eleanor grew weaker. Her voice was softer, her hands lighter in Adrian's. One afternoon, as sunlight streamed through gauzy curtains, she asked for them both to come sit beside her bed. Her eyes lingered on Adrian, then on Lily, a faint smile curling her lips. "You've given me peace," she whispered. "But I have one last wish." Lily leaned closer. "Anything," she said gently. Eleanor's voice trembled, but her eyes were clear. "I want to see you truly Wednesday, not in contracts or ballrooms, but here, where love lives. Before I go." Adrian's throat tightened. "Grandmother." She squeezed his hand with surprising strength. "Promise me." He swallowed hard, then nodded. "I promise." The next 48 hours became a whirlwind. Not the glittering chaos of galas or staged photo ops, but something simpler, purer. Staff hurried through the gardens, stringing lights between the rose bushes Eleanor had once planted herself. Musicians from the local conservatory tuned their violins beneath a white arch. Neighbors brought flowers, filling vases with lilies, peonies, roses. On the morning of the wedding, the sky blushed with pink dawn. Lily stood in her small room, staring at her reflection in a mirror framed with ivy. The dress was not designer silk but soft lace, borrowed from Eleanor's cedar chest. It smelled faintly of lavender and old wood. Her hands shook as she smoothed the fabric. A soft knock came. Adrian entered, not in a tuxedo, but in a simple suit, his tie undone, his eyes softer than she had ever seen. He paused, drinking in the sight of her. "You look," he faltered, his usual composure failing, "like everything I didn't know I needed." Her chest tightened. "Are we really doing this?" His lips curved. This time, no contracts, no clauses, just yes or no. She swallowed, tears brimming. "Then yes." "Oh." Later, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, the garden bloomed with soft music and the glow of lanterns. Guests gathered quietly, only family, close friends, a handful of staff who had become part of their lives. Eleanor sat in her wheelchair near the front, a blanket tucked around her, her eyes alight with joy. Adrian took his place beneath the arch, heart pounding in a way boardrooms had never provoked. When Lily appeared, walking slowly down the petal-strewn aisle, his breath caught. She wasn't just the girl from the bookstore anymore. She was the woman who had stood beside him through scandal, through loss, through truth. When she reached him, he took her hands, steady and sure. The officiant's voice was gentle, but Adrian hardly heard the words. He only saw her eyes shimmering, lips trembling with a smile that undid him completely. "Do you, Adrian Hayes, take Lily Brooks to be your wife?" His voice didn't waver. "With everything I am, I do." "Do. And do you, Lily Brooks, take Adrian Hayes to be your husband?" Tears slipped down her cheeks as she whispered, "I do." Cheers rose softly, heartfelt and unpolished. Adrian slid the ring onto her finger. Not the cold diamond of a contract, but the simple band of a promise. When their lips met, the garden seemed to hold its breath, then erupted in applause. Eleanor clapped softly, her smile radiant through the tears on her cheeks. "The best mistake," she murmured, echoing words Lily would never forget. That night, after the guests had gone, Adrian and Lily sat together beneath the stars, the roses swaying gently in the evening breeze. He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "From a lie to the truth," he whispered. "From a deal to forever." She smiled, tears sparkling on her lashes. "From survival to love." Oh, and somewhere above, as if the heavens themselves had been waiting, the night sky opened in a scatter of stars. In the quiet of the garden, hand in hand, Adrian and Lily sealed not just a vow to each other, but a promise to live in the kind of love no scandal could tarnish, no contract could define. A love real enough to outlast empires. A love true enough to grant Eleanor her final wish. And a love strong enough to begin again,